Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're just going to give everybody a minute or so to make themselves comfortable, come into the room. But if you can see us and hear us, then pop a message in the chat box. Tell us where you are this morning and what the weather's like or something like that, just so we know that we can hear you. But delighted that you could take the time out of your day to join us this morning for what's going to be a really informative session. I have absolutely no doubt. Nothing in the chat box yet. So that always worries me a little bit when nobody says good morning or hello. There we go. We're okay. We're all good. James has said hello. Thank you, James. Excellent. Cape Town, all good. Good morning, Jamie, Adam, Marquita. Thank you. Right. So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this two-part webinar series. We are running for about 45 minutes for you this morning. So we will be done by about 11:15 UK time, given we've got a few people joining us internationally. I'd love this to be interactive, so pop stuff in the Q&A box as we go through. We will very happily take questions. And really, this is part one of two. So as part one, we're really focusing on what the opportunity is, why we think you should be using technology to automate and improve what you do for your clients, and why you can improve your firm in terms of the way it operates. Part two, this time next week, so next Tuesday, we're going to dig deeper into how you really start tweaking and maximizing the automation opportunities that exist for you. But today, we may have people that are right at the beginning of their journey. We may have people that have got 20% of their clients digitally enabled, 50%, 60%, but we want it to be 100%. So really, wherever you are, we're going to have snippets today that are going to be really useful to help you get your all of your clients over the line and working as efficiently as they possibly can. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Paul and Katie. Before I ask them to introduce themselves, for anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Will Farnell. I'm founder of Farnell Clark. We have been Dext Receipt Bank partners for, I don't quite know exactly the year, but I think it was about 2011. So a reasonable chunk of time now. Receipt Bank, as it was, had 8 members of staff when we partnered. So you've come a long way. We've come quite a long way. And I'm also co-founder of App Advisory Plus. So delighted to be facilitating today's session. So Katie, you're next on my screen here. So do you want to tell everybody who you are and a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Although I don't think we can let this go by without pointing out that you guys look like long lost brothers on that slide.
Yes, it's a common thing. It's a common
my
thing.
hair back and won some glasses this morning. Yes, so I'm Katie. I worked in a practice in Lincoln in the East Midlands for 13 years. And went there straight from being an apprentice up to managing our digital transformation project, moving a number of clients over to cloud solutions. And then from there, worked for Xero for 3.5 years, initially in a like a success role, helping firms to onboard onto the cloud, and then later on into a practice solutions role, and moved to Dext in January 2021, a week after Paul. So we come together as a double act more often than we'd like to admit. And I look after the practice solutions and sales enablement team here at Dext.
Excellent. Thank you, Katie. And Paul.
Yes, hello everyone. Delighted to join this morning. I'm our VP of Accounting and Product Strategy here at Dext. As Kate says, we're coming up to our 3 years at Dext. I'm very heavily involved in our overall sort of roadmap and provide a lot of accounting knowledge and insights into everything we do. Prior to starting at Dext, I was like Katie in practice. I was in practice for 21 years. And in my later years, I was a partner within the firm, one of 8 partners, and I was head of our digital strategy and spent a lot of time with the implementation of new technology, supporting our clients. And then I worked with another 30 firms across the UK as well on their overall digital implementation. So delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you both. And hopefully everybody's kind of taken from that this is real life experience we're going to be talking about this morning. All three of us have worked in practice. All three of us have implemented technology across sizable client bases. Paul and Katie, certainly larger client bases than I ever worked with when we were implementing technology across our client base, because we were slightly luckier in that we started on our journey very early as a new firm. Paul and Katie have got that experience of moving significantly legacy-based clients into a new way of working. So this is why I say, if you have questions, this is the best possible opportunity you're going to have to get some real life experience of some suggestions about how you can tackle some of the roadblocks, challenges that you're facing, whether that's with clients, whether that's with your senior leadership team in the practices that you work in, whatever form it takes. Let's use the opportunity today to see if we can kind of help unblock some of those blockages for you. So the plan for the session is we've done some welcomes and intros, and I think it's always worth starting with like why should we care about this? Why should we be helping our clients move to digital workflows? Why should we be focusing on this as a priority for our own firms? Because when you understand the why, it makes the how much easier. So we're going to talk a little bit firstly in terms of some of the reasons why you should be doing this. Clearly you need your own why you're doing it, but we will share some of ours and some of the reasons that are sitting externally now, and the conversations that the three of us have with accounting firms in terms of why we think they should be doing this. But then the bulk of the session is all about how. So we know what we want to do, we know why we need to do it, but kind of help us understand how we do it. And that's going to take the shape of certainly how do we get buy-in and why getting buy-in is important, what the implementation process is, some of the challenges around time, and how we make sure that we resource effectively. And then really, what's the real value? What's the real value of doing this? What's it going to unlock for us in our firms and for our clients? We'll have time for Q&A, but if people throw great questions in, I'm going to pick those up as we go through the session. And then we will just tee up what we're going to talk about in part 2 for you. So that is our plan of action for today. So I will stop screen share. And Paul, Katie, why bother? Who wants to go first? Why is it so important that firms focus on delivering this digital transformation for themselves and for their clients?
Do you want me to go?
Go, Paul.
I mean, I can look back from my own experience of what the why was when we first started. And actually, the why initially was we were starting to get a bit worried about whether we could start losing clients. We saw a couple of firms who were really pushing it very, very hard, and clients had started asking us about it. So initially for us, the why was more of a defensive play, and making sure that we were keeping up to date and making sure that we weren't having these difficult conversations. And then you've got, moving forward, it's that competitive angle as well. We started to realize, or I started to realize very, very early on when we were pitching for new work and things like that, it was a massive differentiator to demonstrate that we could offer tech advisory, we could offer a different type of service as well. So it really helped us also win new work. And now, very much so, I think many people look at it as that sort of, it's a very competitive environment, work can get done quicker and more easily. And that opens the door to sort of more I don't like the word advisory, I never have, but more conversations with clients at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty as well. So we've got all of that capacity challenge that comes into play as well. But I know Katie will have a number of other thoughts as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was definitely the reason, same for us really, it was a bit of a defensive play with why we decided to go with more of a cloud-based general ledger. But I was just reflecting while you were talking, and interestingly, the day that I took over our digital transformation project, somebody else had been looking after it previously, and I took over. I'm thinking it must be about 10 or 12 years ago now, which sounds like crazy, really. But anyway, I just remember thinking, I can't sit and write out one more bank statement. I can't type one more bank statement into a spreadsheet. I was in a firm of 100 people, and I was the first person to think at the time, or I'm assuming that I was, because no one else had kind of taken up the mantra or the mantle, sorry. I was the first person to actually sit there and think, I can't do this anymore. Like, this isn't good job satisfaction for me. And I went ahead and Googled bank data extraction technology. I think I initially tried to play around with our scanner because it had some sort of, do you remember the scanners where they had like an OCR kind of built in, and it didn't actually create a very nice looking extraction. I had to formulate it to split it out into columns and all sorts of things. So it wasn't brilliant, but I thought it was a good attempt at like a start approach, but went on, Googled it, and found a data extraction tool for bank statements. And so I think the driver for me, the why, was really not even to save time. It was just job satisfaction. It was that I can't sit and do this anymore, that this feels like a really mundane task for like, a qualified accountant who's spent a number of years kind of training and working on things that are a little bit more sophisticated than typing information from one place to another. So that was my very first kind of why.
Yeah, and obviously we were very early adopters. So for those that don't know the story, we were probably one of the first 100% cloud practices globally back in 2009. So in 2009 or 2008, we partnered with Cashflow at the time. We kind of almost predated Xero into the UK, and for me it was a case of I just didn't get like why there wasn't a better way. Because for me, I always use the analogy that, like, if we were lucky, we got data that was on a desktop computer in a dark corner of an office that only one person had the key to, and we got the key 6 months after year end if we were lucky. And for me, it was like, well, the internet's here. Why? There must be a way that I can access and look at the same thing as my clients. And we found Cashflow and partnered with Cashflow in 2008. We were the largest partner firm by middle of 2009, and end of 2009, everyone we'd got was using Cashflow. But the point was, we were still keying data. So the benefits were that we could share data with the clients, but we still had to key data. We still had to key bank transactions and so on. And I took a penny drop moment when I came across Receipt Bank, that all of a sudden was like, oh wow, okay, this makes sense now, because I can get clients to give me the data at the point they spend the money, and I don't have to key it in. We had the challenge with Cashflow, of course, that we didn't have bank feeds, and Xero did, and all of that kind of thing. So it all came together in 2015 when we moved our clients to Xero. But at that point, we could be doing daily bookkeeping. We could be getting data, bank data in, receipt data in, invoice data in, and we could process it at that point in time. And for me, the why has always been, how do we give clients access to data and information that means they can make decisions, and that we can work with them on that data. And it astonishes me that I saw some stats from Xero very recently that said only 37% of I've got to be careful how I use the language, because Xero have pointed out that it wasn't based on their data in terms of how many Xero orgs have bank data connected. It was a survey, and the survey came back and said only 37% of firms are using bank feeds, which means 63% are not. Which means
that's
63
actually worse.
It is, yeah, it's even worse. Yeah, so 63% of firms are uploading CSVs, or worse still, keying bank data. And what that got me to challenge is, well, if that's the bank feeds, and that's the easy bit, like connecting a bank feed is like, well, it's the first thing you do. You get the note come up, say, connect your bank feeds. When we get to data extraction tools, then what's that number? I mean, Xero's report said 31%. I don't believe 31%. And because it's not physical connections, I believe it even less. You guys kind of working in this space will have a real view of whether it's 31% or less than 31%. And it's really easy for firms to say, yes, we're doing it because they've got 5 clients that are using it. But if they've got 100 clients, they're not really doing it, are they? So I think the point is that 15 years on since we started this journey, and you guys have done a good chunk of that time as well, the needle hasn't moved massively. And you mentioned competition, Paul, and for me in 2012, whenever it was we started using Receipt Bank, our clients were doing the marketing for us. They'd sit in a coffee shop and they'd take a photo of their receipt, and they'd be with somebody and say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, well, I'm doing my account." "What do you mean you're doing your accounts?" But this is the point. The majority are still not doing this. So from a competitive point of view, we're still early adopter territory, which is astonishing. I mean, I'm not going mad, am I?
No, I completely agree with you. It still amazes me with all the conversations I have, and Katie and I have lots of conversations that some have just not started at all anywhere, and I'd say the majority haven't. If anything, I would say Excel is often still one of the favorite tools being used. And the benefits and the opportunities that come from moving towards cloud-based solutions are immense. And I do think there has been this perception, though, in the marketplace that everyone always feels that they're behind everyone else.
Yeah.
And everyone feels like I've left it too late. Everyone I talk to, it's like, wow, they've done everything. It's amazing. It's not the case at all. No one, I don't think, other than obviously yourself, Will, of course, I don't think has nailed a proper, fully digital sort of cloud-based firm. Partly because everything continues to evolve and things change, but 100% agree with
that's what I was going to say. So the stat is 70% of businesses' records are maintained on Excel still now, which kind of that's even outside of those ones that are on Xero without a bank feed. So that's kind of completely outside of those numbers altogether. And about 95% of lead schedules are still prepared on Excel outside of an automated working papers tool. So there's huge amounts of as much as Excel is computerized, obviously it's not cloud, is it? It's not a proper kind of cloud solution.
And things can get corrupt, incomplete records, just adding up the cells can go wrong. People cut off the last 10 lines by mistake. So I think there's a long way to go.
Yeah. Excellent. So there's a few whys in there. A competitive opportunity. It's the right thing to do by clients. It makes sense for your firm. If we want to get closer to clients, the only way I believe, it's not the only way, the way that I think is the best opportunity for us to do that is through delivering regular bookkeeping, to create reasons for us to engage with clients on a regular basis. You can only do daily bookkeeping if you're getting daily bank feeds, if you're getting clients hitting really good delay date index stats, Paul, and making sure that we're getting data within a matter of days of them spending the money. Because if it's any longer than that, you're not going to be able to deliver that real time or live. I'm always cautious with saying real time because we will never do real time yet. But live accounting data, we have to get those things right. But that should be the driver. It's the right thing to do for the clients that we serve. So we've got a few whys there, and hopefully for anybody that's listening or watching this back on playback, there's enough there to kind of at least trigger the thinking and say, actually, yes, we really do need to find a way to make this happen, which is what we're going to spend the next 25 minutes or so talking about, really, in terms of how do we do it. So let's assume that that we've got people here that either know they need to do it but haven't started yet, or have got a few clients that they've got onto Xero or whatever. They're starting to use Dext. What's step one? I mean, we talked about getting buy-in. I mean, Paul, I think from your point of view, and Katie, the conversation we had at the beginning, that this is the key. If you don't have buy-in, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, buy-in is so important. At the end of the day, you need everyone within your firm, within your practice, to be on this same journey as you. You want them bought into the journey, so that they can talk about it passionately. They can talk to clients about it. They can talk about the benefits. If you don't have everyone on this journey or aren't bought into it, then ultimately what happens is you don't get to your end goal. And you know, it gets frustrating, and then you don't see the returns that you were expecting, and then people start to question, why are we doing it? And you know, the nice thing about having everyone on this journey as well, it creates the opportunity to empower more of the team as well. I know when I started the journey many years ago, it was just me. It can be quite a lonely role as well. My old managing partner once referred to me as sort of wandering lonely as a cloud, because it was just, you know, I just felt lost, and it was just me there trying to deal with everything. But the second you bring more people in, it creates engagement, and actually what that ultimately led to was some of the team coming to me going, can I help? Can I be involved? Because they were excited by it. They could see the future. They could see what it meant for them. And also the big part of it is you don't want the team worrying about it. There's a natural instinct to think, I don't want to do it because it may have a negative impact for me. So, you know, I think that whole bringing the team in is absolutely critical to the overall success. And that's where sufficient time needs to be spent.
I'm just remembering actually a story about the risk of not having buy-in, if that's helpful. So I was obviously the same as Paul, felt like a bit of a lonely cloud. And actually my heart always really goes out to people who I chat to at trade shows who are in a similar position to the one that Paul and I were in within our practices, and trying to implement change in quite a difficult environment is a thankless task. But so we had 5 regional offices in the firm that I worked in, and we actually, when we invested in cloud technology, we chose Xero after obviously processes of looking at all the different products and deciding that that was the one that was best for us and our clients. And we then had the Xero team come and support us, which was fantastic, with a almost like a roadshow of our offices, doing implementation sessions and showing the product off and how it can best be used. And we did it in all of the offices. I felt like that was a good way of kind of spreading the message and getting everybody to understand the objectives and realize, you know, at this point, we're now paying for 500 subscriptions. Let's actually get those into use as quickly as possible. And clients actually moved into those licenses because we're paying for them. We need to use them. Unfortunately, one of the directors that ran one of the satellite offices didn't catch the fire that I was trying to spread, and decided just to go off and buy 100 licenses of a completely different product, which we were then paying for on top of the 500 that I'd already purchased from Xero. And he decided, and I said to him, you know, why have you done that? And he said, I was so sick of hearing you bang on about Xero and your plans, I just decided to go a different way. And I was like, that seems a little bit wild to me. Like, it's one business, you know, we should be running one project across all of the offices. And that was really a highlight of what I had obviously done wrong. I'd not set or clearly communicated, you know, the project objectives, why we were doing it, why I'd chosen the product that I'd chosen, what the risks were to the rest of the business if they weren't to kind of take on the direction of travel that I was trying to pitch to them. And it was a lesson learned for me that you really have to be very clear with your communication. It's really important to share, if you are kind of picking a product as an individual on behalf of a large business, maybe share with them the reasons that you've chosen the products, kind of where the wins are in one over another, and why you believe that to be the best one for the business. I don't think you need to answer to everyone and have to justify it, but you should definitely just communicate really clearly what your thought process has been, how it's going to impact them, how you think it's going to change their day-to-day for the best, and why it's not kind of a risk to their career. Because I think change, when it's not managed well, can feel a little bit scary for the people who it's then affecting but haven't been brought into the communication.
It's really important. I completely agree with all of that, Katie. And I think I remember when I sort of pitched to my fellow partners at the time and making sure that I'd answered all of their questions, because actually they became that extra sounding board, that communicator who, if they were to get questions from clients or questions from the team, because they will have appraised or mentored some of the team, that everyone was singing from the same hymn sheet. We weren't giving confusing messages. We weren't saying 1 week we're doing this, next week we're doing this. We had a very clear strategy and a very clear vision of where we wanted to go as a firm. And ultimately, we used to tell everyone we wanted to be a digital firm of the future, supporting all of our clients to help them achieve their goals. And we were going to do that through the use of, our app stack that we'd decided. And it was that just made sure that we were all on the same path. And throughout that journey, we continued to share success stories as well as those stories which weren't successful, and there will always be some of those as well. Not everything goes perfectly, but if you've got everyone on board, it makes that process so much easier.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as well that even once you've started the rollout, it's making sure that everyone understands why you're using the products that you are, because you don't want that situation that people just come in and just use a product because they've been told to use it. It's like, how do we make sure that everybody understands this is why we're doing it? This is what the objective of doing this is, because you will get new team members come along and how do we add, and perhaps that's something we haven't done that well in terms of, we've done this for so long. And I think we had a situation recently where we were taught how to use Receipt Bank in 2012. And actually, we've not really had any training because we haven't asked for it. Of course, it's available. We haven't watched the webinars or whatever. But it's like 10 years on, the product's changed, and it's like we were doing stuff that clearly wasn't getting the best out of the product because we had this chain of training. So somebody new, I trained people originally because when we started, we were a team of 8 or 9 people, and people have come along, and the people that I trained them, and they trained the next people, and you get that situation where nobody stops and says, yeah, but what about this new feature that was introduced 3 years ago? We're not using that. So I think it's really important that we maintain that communication and that everybody kind of understands why we're doing what we're doing and how we do it. And your point on change, Katie, I think is really important. And when I talk to firms, it's a case of, look, everyone in a firm genuinely cares about clients. It's like it's built into the DNA of accountants. So when we talk about change, we've got to position the change in terms of what's the value to the client. So we're making this change because it's going to have this impact on the client. So if you want to get that buy-in, it's like, let's focus the change on what the benefit is to the client directly or indirectly, so that it's easier for people to buy into that.
It's a really interesting point, that, because I actually remember when I used to do hundreds and hundreds of demos to clients, but when I first did my first demo to a particular client, they actually turned around and said, it feels like you're just trying to sell us a solution. And at the time it was Receipt Bank and Xero. And I was just like, actually, I'm not trying to sell you anything. What I'm trying to get across is the value. And I changed the way I talked about it completely after that, in terms of making it more personable and what it actually means for the client, but also what it means for the team as well, who may have been doing some of the work. So I think there's learnings as you go through the process of how you may approach something you think is right, but then you start getting feedback. And it was really important to get feedback from the team. You know, having them bought in meant you got the feedback as well. And it also meant clients would give you feedback and it'd filter through. It meant you could adapt and change as you needed to.
Yeah, I think, feedback loops are really important with this sort of process. And also just realizing that you're, as you've just said, anyone who is sitting in front of a client, as we know, they're essentially your sales team, aren't they? They might not be a trained sales team. They might be kind of bookkeepers and accountants, etc. But you're expecting them to be able to essentially like pitch the product, maybe not as a sales piece, but certainly as an improvement to their own processes. And so you need to make sure that you're equipping the team with everything they need to be able to confidently speak to your clients about the solutions and why it's important for them. And something that we actually do internally is we create battle cards for our sales team, because of course we have a sales team as well, and it's just about like really clear one pager on all the benefits of using a product for a client. So not the products, the benefits for us as a firm, but what are the benefits for this client of using this particular product stack, and battle cards can be really helpful for that.
Yeah, and we've talked about getting buy-in from team, but I guess the other side of the equation here is we've got to get buy-in from clients, and certainly that's normally the barrier that we hear most. We hear firms say, "Oh, my clients won't do that," which is slightly frustrating. And my stock answer to that is, have you asked them?
Yeah, I think we make the mind up for them, don't we, a lot of the time?
We do, and I say we because we're all accountants, so we can say this stuff, can't we? That we are very good as accountants at making assumptions about what our clients will and won't do without actually having a conversation. And I would challenge anybody that remember, clients pay us money to give them advice. I mean, that's the start point of the relationship that we have with clients. So the fact that they've made a conscious decision to pay you to advise them means that you are well within your rights. And if anything, you probably have an obligation, because they're paying you for the advice, to be able to say, we think you should do this because. You can say, we think you should use this technology because it's going to enable you to do X, Y, and Z. That's a conversation that we all absolutely have permission to have.
And it's the age-old example of if you went to a mechanic with your car and they said, well, which oil do you want me to put in, and which wheel shall I put on it, and what tool shall I use to fix the engine? I'd be like, mate, I'm paying you to make those decisions. I've got no idea. You tell me.
One of the best things I ever implemented, which really got us traction and it really started to see sort of hockey stick growth, was, first of all, I got all of my sort of partners, when they'd go out for lunch, I'd just say, with a client or drinks, I'd just say, look, can you just take a picture after you've had the lunch, because that will start the conversation. Every time they did that, it led to a demo with that client because they saw it in action.
Yes.
We then expanded that to the rest of the team. If you go out to a networking event, take a picture. Or if you go and see a client, take a picture. Because when people see it in action and they think, well, normally I lose that receipt, or normally I build, have a pile at the end of the month and things like that, the mindset changes very, very quickly because the value's already been told by the action.
Yep. Yeah. So we've talked about buy-in. We've talked about getting the team brought in, understanding why we're doing it, and so on. We've talked a little bit about clients and the fact that we can't make assumptions about what clients will and won't do. We've got to talk to them. How do we make it happen? So how do we get to the point that, right, everyone understands why we're doing it, now we've got to do it? So Katie, I mean, you spent a bit of time in success and enablement and everything else. So how do you help firms actually take the action to implement?
Yeah, so we talked about it a couple of times, but I would say definitely, first of all, just setting your goals and objectives and making them manageable as well, because I think it can feel really overwhelming. Our firm had 5,000 clients when I first picked up the project that arguably were on no digital solution at all. How do you look at 5,000 clients? Well, you obviously break it down and use that old word segmentation. So maybe you've got a database already, maybe you export it into a spreadsheet and do some messing around with it in a spreadsheet, but basically reduce it down to bite-sized manageable chunks and really look at where the quick wins are. So for me, it was where is our kind of some of our lowest recoverability, what kind of jobs are they on? And it tended to be like the bag and box jobs, because essentially what we were doing was not charging for it, but probably doing a year's worth of bookkeeping all at once when we were actually doing the year-end accounts. And we never considered them to be a bookkeeping job because we weren't doing it monthly or quarterly, but essentially that is what we were doing. We were just doing it all at once. And so that the recoverability would often be impacted on those jobs the most, because the first thing you do is you type the bank statements out, you create your manual cash book across however many bank accounts they have, you try and marry them up with purchase invoices so you can work out what they've bought, etc., etc. And so actually that was a really quick win for us. But not only did it instantly turn around the recoverability on the job, but it also created an amazing training ground for our team. We were talking earlier about this, but I think something that I hadn't realized when we first picked up digital solutions was that as much as multi-user, multi-access was absolutely fantastic, and it really kind of changed how we worked with our clients across the whole industry, what it also created was quite an exposed environment for teams to learn in, because it was an area where we were processing client data, but no longer was it just for our firm to look at, and then when we were finished we would hand it over to the client for them to then look at. But actually, if the clients had user access, they would log in and see and almost watch us do bookkeeping in real time, and that felt very exposing for a team who were just being kind of training themselves on the product and how it worked and the best way to use it. And so actually by attacking those year-end jobs first, where we were processing it for them, the clients didn't need access, it meant that the team were really like learning on all of the features, the best way to use them, our own internal processes of how we use cloud technology, but without the clients kind of seeing us learn. So it was kind of twofold, really. It improved the recoverability overnight. My example of this that I always use is we had your typical bag and box job. I processed it year after year after year, 2 carrier bags worth of invoices in one, bank statements and checkbooks in the other. And they drop them in once a year. I'd sit and type it all out into Excel, create the cash book, etc. The bookkeeping element of that job would take me about a week, and then it was another week doing the accounts and the working papers and the tax and everything. And the first year, so given I didn't have any rules or anything set up, the very first year that I put it onto like a data extraction tool plus a general ledger, it took me from 2 weeks of processing down to 1 week. So we basically like halved the amount of time that we spent on the job, and the recoverability went from about 70%, which had been the same kind of year after year, up to about 150%, maybe even better than that. And I can remember taking it to the director and saying, have you seen the impact here on the recoverability by using these tools? And he said, well, it's been so bad for years, there's absolutely no way we're handing over, like we're not reducing the fee just because you've done it faster. We'll keep the fee the same, thank you very much, and maybe we'll make up some of the recoverability we've lost over the last 10 years. So the impact was instant, and so that then became a case study that we could roll out across all of the other offices and say, first attack, go after all of these jobs. These are the best ones that we can start with, and then you take on that. Once you've done all of those and you've automated those, and you attack your internal bookkeeping, your external bookkeeping, etc.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you made that point about the fee, because that summarizes the whole idea of time recording versus fixed fee, doesn't it? That if we bill on time, there's no incentive to work smarter. And the point that you made is exactly right, that the output is no less valuable just because you did it quicker.
Yeah.
And this is like coming back to the why. This is us giving you permission, if you feel you need it, to make more profit on the work that you do by working smarter, investing in tools, investing in new processes to improve the way you work and deliver better margins because you've invested in those new ways of working. So yes, point well made, Katie. Paul, I mean, when it comes to implementing and actually making it happen? What are your top tips?
I mean, my sort of three areas that I always still stand by today on everything I do, and I refer to it as sort of accountability, measurability, and visibility. That actually ties in with what Katie has just run through as well. You need someone accountable to make sure it happens and moves forward, which is different to someone who's responsible. You could have lots of individuals who are responsible for something, but you generally have one person who's accountable for that project. The measurability bit is, how do you know you've been successful if you can't measure it? So it could just be a case of coming back to sort of your bank feeds comment earlier. You could have a target of 100 clients you want bank feeds in place. You can measure that. If you hit 100, you know you've been successful. If during the course of the project it's not moving where it should do, you know where you are at any point in time. And the visibility bit is actually helping with all of that buy-in of the team as well. And we actually had a totalizer when we started our journey in the basement, and that was actually to get to our magic 100 when we first started this journey. And that was in the team area. So every time the team came in, dropped their coats off, went out for lunch, you know, just had a sit round, they could see it. They could see where we were. So I was accountable. Katie was accountable. Measurability, you could measure it. You knew where you were trying to get to, and that could have been on the recoverability as well. And then that visibility just meant everyone could see it. You knew exactly where you were at a point in time, and that really helped us get momentum. And then when we hit the 100, we went up to 500, 15, you know, and we just kept on going up and up. We didn't have a totalizer at that point.
To the people who had converted the most each month as
We tried to gamify it. Yes, we did. And no one, it was really interesting because we used to track by manager as well how many clients they'd spoken to. No one wanted to be at the bottom, you know, so everyone was constantly trying to do it. And there was no penalty for not doing it or anything like that. But we were trying to create that engagement, and it was that measurability and visibility that really had the biggest impact.
Yeah, and kind of linked, bridging into this idea of like the time. For us, the biggest project we ever did was moving all of our clients from cash flow to zero in 2015. So whilst most firms were still working out how do we do desktop to cloud migration, we did 500 clients from cloud to cloud. Move My Books didn't work with cash flow at the time, so we built our own API tool to do the migration. And we started that process, and it was really easy at the beginning because we did all the easy stuff. We did all of the in-house bookkeeping jobs and everything else. And then it kind of stalled. Once it got to the point where it got more difficult, it kind of stopped and the momentum was lost. And what got us over that is viewing it as a project, and saying, right, we need this to happen, and it's not moving anywhere. So what resource do we need? What time frame are we working to? What budget do we need to put to it to enable it to happen? And how do we manage and monitor the progress of it? And when we did that, we did it, and we ended up moving those 500 clients over a period of about 18 months.
I think that's really important, because I think if you can afford it, if you can find it somewhere, having a dedicated resource on this sort of project will get you moving so much faster than someone trying to simultaneously manage a portfolio of clients and a massive digitization project at the same time. And I think it's where a lot of firms fall down, is that they put someone who's really keen on kind of cloud and everything like that, and more kind of advanced technologies onto the project, but don't like relinquish them of their client portfolio. And so their time is still very split, and they're almost managing it on the side. And I think you'll get much slower progress that way. Yeah.
Conscious of time, so we need to start thinking about wrapping up. So if anybody's got any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box. Paul, I don't know if you can see the question box, but there's a product specific question there. So maybe if while Katie and I just carry on talking a bit, if you can provide any answer to that one, that would be great. So this idea of time, Katie, it's I guess it's like it's dedicating the resource, and both you and Paul kind of filled almost kind of cloud champion type roles, didn't you, in the firms that you worked in? How did that work, and what happened What challenges, I guess, did you have in terms of having your client responsibilities as well as the role that you had as digital cloud champion?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was alluding to. So yeah, I personally still had a portfolio of clients. I think Paul, because you were obviously a partner by this point. So
I was, but I had a portfolio as a partner still as well.
yeah. And I think it's possible, but I don't think you'll get the best results from that just because people are spread so thin. And you still got kind of your own metrics and things to hit, haven't you, around chargeability and that sort of thing. But what I would also say is probably not the one is that when I was initially looking after the project, because I was the one who I guess knew how to use Xero. I think what's important is to segregate the roles within a project team, isn't it? So your cloud champion is not necessarily the same person as the product expert. You might have like separate levels, and I know certainly that's something that we used to advise on when I was at Xero, was you would have a sponsor at kind of partner director level. That doesn't mean that they knew how to use the product inside out. It just meant that they really were able to champion the vision of the overall project at that kind of partner director level. And then under that, you would have the cloud champion, who I guess was responsible for really understanding the different products on the market, what the benefits were. They were probably initially going to kind of choose which products were best for the firm, but they'd also drive the change, manage the project team, that sort of thing. And then another level would be that you would have someone who was like the real product expert, who was kind of in and out, training clients, training internal teams and things, and you would have different levels of a project team, and not just expect one person to do all of those things. Because what ended up happening was, because I was the cloud champion and the product expert, if a client came in who was on cloud technology, especially if they were on Xero, they'd end up just getting added to my portfolio, one after the other, because what we'd not got to the point of was where we'd trained a group of champions who were all able to deal with Xero clients. And they were like, oh, if this one's on Xero, irrelevant of the industry, the size of business, etc., that's going in Katie's portfolio, which I don't think is kind of the right way around. So I ended up with huge amounts of clients. So I think, yeah, making sure that you've got the right structured team in place for your firm. It might not be that you have that like 4-level tier, but certainly working out what that best one is, and then I guess adjusting people's KPIs to accommodate that role.
Perfect. And the idea of time is probably the big, and you guys will have talked firms going through this process. Time is normally the biggest reason why this stuff doesn't happen. My challenge back on that is that there will never be enough time, and therefore it's not the case that there isn't enough time. It's the fact that you're not putting enough priority on the things that are most important. So you will never have enough time to do everything that you want to do. So therefore you've got to think about what are the priorities. And once I identify the priorities, I will commit the time that's needed to do it. And it comes back to like thinking about this implementation as a project, that you absolutely have to focus on when are we going to do this by, what resource do we need to enable that to happen, and put the priority on it. Paul, we talked about the real value. So the real value of doing this. Why we're coming back, kind of almost wrapping around to why, but when people do it, where are we going to get to? What are we going to see as a result?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of reasons why we're doing this and where you get to, and ultimately, all of these are important. But we know capacity is a challenge. We know client demands are increasing. Clients want more information, more regular information. The role of the accountant is changing as well slightly. Compliance is never going to go away. Compliance is always going to be there, but this sort of strategic advisor, this sort of sounding board role is certainly increasing, whether you want to call it, a different title for it, but it's that support that you provide, and that ultimately you need capacity for. You need to be able to offer those services, and this is where technology can really help to free up or create capacity or make more capacity available. We're also in a very competitive market at the moment. Recruitment is hard, retention of employees is difficult as well. And by being a digital firm, it creates opportunities, exciting opportunities for graduates coming through, or your existing team as well. Creates opportunities to empower them to really take on particular projects. You may decide you want to look at a particular app and really roll it out. And that can be great for individuals who are excited and passionate about being involved in this, and help retain them in the business as well. Rather than thinking, oh, I'll go to that firm around the corner because they seem to be able to offer work from home, everything is digital, all of these things that come from offering cloud sort of based solutions. And then I guess the third one as well, the market itself, I actually call it the mid-market squeeze at the moment, in terms of we can see lots of firms in the mid-market, people looking to exit. They're either selling to larger firms or individuals leaving to start up on their own. And I've got no data behind this, but I truly believe that a digital firm, everything cloud-based, is going to be a lot more appealing to any acquirer who's sort of coming in to look to see, what the opportunities there are, that there's there as well. And ultimately, all of this, you're no longer geographically restricted. We had clients all over the UK, and we could support them on all of their services as well, without the need to be round the corner. The world is changing, but for me, relationships, interactions was always my primary number one. It was always so critical. And if I could have more conversations with clients, the better.
Yeah.
And this is what, technology opens the door to allow.
Perfect. While I bring my slides back on to wrap up, Paul, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we've got in store for next week's session? So next week, Tuesday, again, 10:30, we're doing session 2. Why should people come back and listen to session 2?
So session 2, we're really going to start to deep dive into some of the challenges, some of the real challenges, how to get the most from your software, whatever you use, how to take it to the next level. Signing up to Xero, Dext, whatever product it may be, doesn't just suddenly make you a digital firm. There are, lots of things that have to be considered, and that doesn't happen overnight either. So we're going to really start to sort of go into a lot more detail, some real specific areas, and really help you go on to the next part of that journey.
There's that fine tuning, isn't it? Looking at where are the extra few hours that we can save by really tweaking the process, making sure that we're using the tools to their full capability, internal reporting, and some of those things, aren't we? So really hope everybody can join us for that next week. I always like to leave some key takeaways in terms of what we talked about today. Big one for me is it's not too late to be an early adopter. We go back to the stats that we mentioned at the beginning. Those that have heard me will hear me talk about 20%. I still can't get beyond 20% adoption, despite stats that people throw at me. So there is a massive opportunity for everybody to utilize technology. It's a never-ending journey. Whilst we have all of our clients are using cloud accounting technology, we are a long way from being perfect. There are things that we can do better. So the journey never ends. It just keeps changing. We have a mantra in our business that it's fail fast. If you're going to fail quickly. So if you're going to try things, then work out very quickly whether they work or not. And if they don't, fine, move on. Try something else. So it's a mindset, but it's one that has served us reasonably well. And of course, join us for part 2 next week. Dext have put together a free automation guide. We will send a link to this in a follow-up with a recording of today's session. So if you have any colleagues that couldn't make it, but you feel they'll get value from it, we will circulate the recording. morning. But do feel free to download the free guide, and please do join us next week. I think we've probably dealt with most of the questions and things there. Paul and Katie, I'll just make sure there's nothing else lingering.
There is a question on Surf that I will need to look into. I don't believe it's possible at the moment. If by all means, feel free to reach out to me directly on this as well. So either connect via LinkedIn with me or even my email address, which is paul.lodder@dext.com.
Excellent. Katie, Paul, any closing comment, tips, or suggestions for people as we end today's session?
I would just really say definitely download the guide, because a lot of what we talked about today we put into the PDF around everything from like communication plans to structuring the team to like project planners to a guide to help you compare different apps to each other. So we put a lot of kind of a lot of thought into the guide that you've just linked. So I would definitely say to download that, and it will have loads and loads of the bits that we talked about today and hopefully a bit more.
Perfect. Thank you. Paul, anything from you?
I would just say, if you haven't done anything, be brave and make just a start of this journey, and don't set the bar too high at the start, because there will be times when it doesn't go according to plan. Set yourself realistic goals that you feel that you can achieve and work towards, and don't worry whether you're at the start of the journey, you've been doing it for a couple of weeks, or you're well in advance. Everybody is at different stages, and we've all got the same ultimate goal of enhancing the services, creating capacity, and all of the other areas that we discussed.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, Paul, Katie, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I can't wait to kick off next week's in a week's time. Great to have you back for that. And for everybody that's taken time out of their day, whether you've joined us for this live or you've taken almost an hour now out of your day to watch the recording. Thank you very much for doing that. Hope it's been useful. Do join us for the second session next week, where, as Paul said, we'll dig into a bit more depth and detail on this for you. But enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday. Thanks, guys. See you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.